But here, what you have here in that thick black line is how high this year seawater temperature has been, the surface of the seawater has been compared to all the other years. Like last year was a little high, it's the yellow one, but as you can see, all the other ones are below that one. We don't really fully understand all the factors that are causing these year heat waves. We know that the El Niño is playing an important role as a driver, but there are much more on this, and scientists are trying to figure out. Next. So what we're having in the Bahamas is we have a stony coral tissue loss disease, but sadly now we have a massive bleaching event. And this is, again, photomosaics from a reef area in New Providence. And the image on your left, it was taken in January this year, and the image on your right was taken in August this year. As you can see, when you go and you don't know much about corals, you see the one in January, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see something, but it's kind of a dull, right? And then you go into the August one, and you can see all the white, bright corals. And there are some that maybe you don't see that well, but they are like more like bright green. So the bright ones are bleach, and the others are pale. And this is something that we are seeing in most of the reefs around the Bahamas. Next. So bleaching is not new for the Bahamas, and then I was saying for Trinidad and Tobago. So we had many researchers working and collaborating with us. And the first bleaching event that was actually recorded was in 1983. So here what you have on your right is all the dates and all the months and years that the Bahamas has experienced any degree of bleaching, from very mild to very massive. All the ones that are underlined are massive bleaching events that resulted, at least from August 1998 and September 2015, on massive mortalities. And here we're having the same issue as in Trinidad and Tobago. This year, bleaching actually started in July, that it's so early compared to any other bleaching record that we have. Next. So just to show you, I'm not going to go really into many of the species, but again, we knew from the NOAA bleaching alert maps that we were going to have some bleaching on the reefs. So in mid-July, I was working around New Providence and Rose Island. There are the islands that I'm based, and the temperatures, the sea water temperatures were 32 degrees Celsius down to 15 meters depth, which is very high for the usual. And I started to see some corals having some bleaching, mainly like staghorn, elkhorn, fire corals, finger corals. And this was affecting about like 20% of all the species in a reef. Next. So by the end of July, beginning of August, this becomes a massive bleaching. So any massive bleaching event is when you have more than 40% of all the coral species bleach. And as you can see in the list, there were many of the corals, including a zoanthid, the one that is like Palithoa caribeum. All the colonies of that zoanthid were bleached. And we're starting to see in shallow reefs some corals like elkhorn corals, fire corals, most are hill corals experiencing some kind of mortality, either partial or total. Next. And the episode of September, and actually last Saturday, bleaching is still happening. We have now, like, temperatures have been going down, but they're still very hot. 30%, and the number of accumulating weeks with these higher temperatures is just, we have in some areas with more than 14 weeks of this heat stress. So we are seeing still, as you can see in the photo, like 80 to 90% of all species are bleached, and is more expensive, more extensive mortality. And in some places like Abaco, there is more north and more to the east. In some areas in Abaco, bleaching isn't as bad as in the central Bahamas, but still massive bleaching events. And with still more data, I'm going to be traveling to the south to see how it is over there in the next few weeks. Next. So the potential implications of these massive bleaching events that hopefully is not going to be, but probably it's going to be a little, we're going to experience high mortality rates across a wide range of species, especially elkhorn, staghorn, we know fire corals. The problem with having these high seawater temperatures is that many of the diseases just kind of outbreak, and we have then a combination with bleaching and diseases as black band disease. And of course, the losing or the coral mortality is going to be an interaction between bleaching and SCTLD. This is going and can result in major changes in the coral community, the species composition, but the main problem is the consequences that it will have in ecological function of the reefs, and of course, the ecosystem services that they provide to other animals and to us. This is not going to be that like the corals will die and tomorrow we'll see all those changes. That will take years, but the consequences can be a disaster.